The receipt fluttered like a verdict as the single mom waitress lifted it from the table, the ink stark and merciless against the white paper. A billionaire had just eaten there, everyone knew it, and he had left a tip that read $0. In a room already humming with judgment, that number felt louder than any accusation, louder than the clatter of plates or the sighs of exhaustion that followed her every shift. She stood still for a moment, her breath shallow, her palms damp, feeling the familiar ache of being unseen. She did not yet know that what lay beneath his plate would quietly undo everything she thought she knew about worth, timing, and the hidden weight of kindness. If you believe in kindness, second chances, and the quiet power of hope, take a moment to like, comment, share, and subscribe to this channel. Your support helps stories like this reach hearts that need them. She had learned to move quickly through life, because standing still cost too much. The diner sat near the edge of town where the highway thinned and the neon signs blinked with a tired patience. Every morning before dawn, she tied her apron with hands that shook from sleep deprivation, kissed her son's forehead while he still dreamed of safer worlds, and drove through fog that clung to the road like an unanswered prayer. The tips paid for groceries when the paycheck couldn't stretch. The smiles paid for nothing but pride, and pride was expensive when the red notice loomed. She was known for her kindness, the way she remembered regulars' orders and refilled coffee without being asked, but kindness did not erase overdue bills or the soft panic that rose each time her phone buzzed with an unknown number. The day the billionaire arrived was ordinary in all the ways that mattered and extraordinary in none. A black car idled outside longer than usual. A man stepped in wearing clothes that looked simple only because they were perfect. He took a booth by the window and ordered quietly. She noticed his hands first, steady and careful, as if they carried something fragile even when they carried nothing at all. She did her job the way she always did, attentive but invisible, efficient without asking for anything in return. The plate returned clean. The cup emptied twice. The check was paid in full. And then there it was, the number that sliced the air, 0. The shame rose before the anger, as it always did. It was a reflex learned over years of counting coins and explaining absences. She imagined the whispers she would endure later, the way people would shake their heads at the arrogance of wealth and the cruelty of indifference. She imagined her son's shoes with the thinning soles and the doctor's reminder about a follow-up appointment she had postponed again. The 0 felt personal, even though it wasn't. It felt like a mirror held up to her fears, reflecting back a life measured in what she could not afford. She cleared the table with the practiced motion of someone who refused to be broken in public. When she lifted the plate, she noticed the weight was wrong, heavier than it should have been. Beneath it lay an envelope, plain and unassuming, its corners squared as if placed with intention. Her name was written on it in careful ink. Not the name stitched on her apron, but her full name, spelled correctly, the way only people who cared enough ever bothered to do. Her heart stumbled, not racing, but pausing, as if bracing for impact. She slipped the envelope into her apron pocket and finished her shift as the sky darkened and the diner lights warmed the room. The envelope seemed to press against her with every step, a quiet insistence that refused to be ignored. At home, after her son fell asleep clutching his worn blanket, she sat at the small kitchen table. Where bills formed an uneven skyline. The refrigerator hummed, and the clock ticked with a patience she did not possess. She opened the envelope with fingers that trembled, expecting money, bracing for disappointment, preparing for nothing at all. Inside was a single sheet of paper and a folded receipt. The paper held no flourish, no sentimental excess, only words written with the clarity of someone who understood consequences. The note explained that the $0 tip was intentional, a test not of her service but of the world's assumptions. It spoke of a life shaped by scarcity, of a mother who waited tables until her hands ached and her hope thinned, of a promise made to never confuse charity with dignity. Beneath the note was an address and a time. The receipt was from years ago, from a diner just like hers, with a tip circled and a message scribbled in the margin about believing in people when it felt risky. She read the note twice, then a third time, her breath catching not because of what it promised but because of what it recognized. It saw her, not as a symbol or a lesson, but as a person standing in the long shadow of effort. The next day, she almost didn't go. The address led to a building downtown that rose with quiet authority, glass and steel reflecting a sky that looked bigger than the one she knew. She wore her best clothes, which were still humble, and carried her courage like a borrowed coat. The meeting room smelled faintly of coffee and new paper. He sat across from her without ceremony, his presence measured and calm. He did not apologize for the zero, and he did not gloat over the reveal. He spoke of systems that break people without noticing, of luck mistaken for merit, of the responsibility that comes with resources. He spoke of her work ethic, her kindness, her resilience, not as virtues to be exploited but as strengths to be supported. He explained the foundation he was building, one focused on funding education, childcare, and emergency relief for working parents who fell through the cracks. He offered her a role, not as a token story, but as a coordinator, someone who understood the terrain because she lived it. The offer did not arrive wrapped in miracles. It came with training, expectations, and a salary that felt unreal only because it was fair. She accepted, not because she believed everything would be easy, but because the path forward finally had edges she could see. The weeks that followed were a blur of learning and adjustment. She traded the diner's clatter for meetings and spreadsheets, the smell of grease for the scent of possibility. She still woke early, still packed lunches, still worried, but the worry had shifted from survival to stewardship. Her son noticed the change first. The way she laughed without checking the clock. The way she read to him at night without her eyes drifting to tomorrow's list. The way she spoke about helping others with a conviction that felt earned. At the foundation, she met parents who looked like her, who carried the same exhaustion in their shoulders and the same stubborn hope in their eyes. She listened more than she spoke. She learned how to translate need into action, how to make the invisible visible without stripping it of dignity. The story of the $0 tip traveled faster than she expected. Headlines flattened it into a twist, a gimmick, a moral. She resisted the urge to correct them, knowing that nuance rarely survived attention. What mattered was the work. Grants were approved. Childcare centers expanded their hours. Emergency funds kept lights on and food on tables. Each small victory stitched together a fabric of change that felt sturdy enough to hold. There were setbacks, of course. Bureaucracy tested patience. Skepticism followed. Generosity like a shadow. Some days she missed the simplicity of wiping tables and counting tips. But then she would receive a letter from a parent who had finished a certification program or a photo of a child smiling in a classroom that stayed open late, and the weight of her choices felt lighter. Years later, she returned to the diner, not as a symbol, but as a customer. The neon still blinked, and the coffee still tasted like perseverance. She left a tip that was generous but unremarkable, because she had learned that kindness did not need spectacle. Before leaving, she tucked an envelope beneath a plate at a corner booth. Inside was not money alone, but an invitation to training, to opportunity, to a future with room to breathe. She did not wait to see who found it. If this story has touched your heart, please take a moment to like the video, share it with someone who needs hope, and subscribe to support more stories that celebrate resilience and quiet courage. And before the ending, please comment below with one word that this story made you feel, so we can read and feel it together. The receipt still fluttered in her memory sometimes, a reminder that meaning often hides where judgment rushes in. She had learned that a zero could be a beginning, that dignity could be restored without being announced, and that the most powerful changes often arrive without applause. As she walked into the evening, the city lights reflecting a future she had helped shape, she carried with her the simple truth that changed everything. Kindness is not measured by what is seen, but by what it makes possible.